Once you get a Bible, please open up to Psalm 136. And we are continuing and finishing up our Thanksgiving or our Giving of Thanks series with Psalm 136. And this is an excellent one to, we're gonna go out with a bang here. Psalm 136, 26 verses. And we are reminded in every single verse that God's mercy endures forever. Every single verse. It's pretty incredible. So this is how I broke it down. Give thanks in verses 1 to 3. So the psalmist is saying, it's encouraging everybody. Give thanks. Give thanks. There's a call to give thanks. And then what we get in verses 4 to 26 is the great wonders. Why would we give God thanks? Now we've pretty much seen this pattern in every psalm. And that's this call or this command to be thankful to God. And then we always ask the question, okay, why? And then the psalmist always answers for us. And same thing here, same pattern. Give thanks, and then we will be told about the great wonders that God performed, and thus the reason, all of the great wonders, why we should give him thanks. Why should we be thankful? So keep in mind that these were originally written for the Israelites, God's people, the Jews, and they had these as part of their worship. And but we obviously we get to take full advantage of these also because we belong to God. We've got a relationship with him. He is our God. We are his people. And so excellent verses here. Now, here's what we're going to do. Verses 1 to 3, we see give thanks. That's what I titled it. And 3 different times we are told to give thanks. Okay, so verse 1 starts, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good." And then in verse 2, "Oh, give thanks to the God of gods." And then in verse 3, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord of lords." Now, you see under each one, "For his mercy endures forever, for his mercy endures forever, for his mercy endures forever." Now, just to give you a heads up, That's that mercy endures forever. That's in every single verse. So I will not read every single time it says "for his mercy endures forever," because we already know what it says. And if I can finish on time, we'll have a little bit of fun with this psalm before we break for small groups. But here's what's going on in the first 3 verses, where it's this call to worship or call to give thanks. But notice the 3 different titles that are used. Verse 1, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord." It's in all caps. "Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever." And then in verse 2, "Oh, give thanks to the God," that's uppercase G, "the God of gods," lowercase g. Okay? And then in verse 3, "Give thanks to the Lord of lords," and the word, both of them there, well, one's capitalized L, but then it's lowercase O-R-D, and obviously, as you can see, the second one is all lowercase, L-O-R-D-S. So what's going on with these titles? Well, this is quite unique. It's incredible here. There's 3 different, now he's saying give thanks, and obviously he's saying give thanks to God, period. Okay? He's not talking about 3 different people, 3 different gods. He's talking about the same God. You may or may not know this, but God has many different titles. Many different titles. Well, we get 3 of them here, 3 great reminders. Now, in verse 1, what he is doing is he's saying, give thanks to the Lord, all caps, L-O-R-D. Now, this is what you will sometimes, you see it various ways. I know there's a clothing line. If you're on Instagram, you see the clothing line. It'll say YHWH. And you might look at that and go, what does that even mean? Okay? This is, it is one of it's the name of God. It's God's name. Yahweh. We would pronounce that Yahweh. Sometimes you're going to hear it pronounced Yahweh. You might hear the name Jehovah. Okay, that's with, putting the different letters, filling in the spaces there. But Yahweh or Jehovah, but what that name means, that all caps L-O-R-D, is that he is the self-existing one. In other words, he doesn't exist because of someone else. He just already exists. He exists on his own. He's self-existent. That's hard for my brain, my puny little brain, to sometimes I'll sit around and I'll think through some of these things and I'll think, man, self-existing. Well, so wait a minute. So wait, where did God come from? And I can drive myself crazy trying to figure that out. And the whole point of this first title, all caps Lord, is that he didn't come from anywhere. He's self-existent. He already exists. You go, okay, but yeah, but what was there before him? No, there wasn't anything before him. That doesn't make any sense to us. That doesn't compute. Because everything that we know, ourselves included, there was something before us. You know, we're not self-existent. We might be self-sufficient, you know, there's different things we do by ourselves, but we're not self-existent. In other words, we haven't always been. We're not eternal, and that's what he's pointing out there. Oh, give thanks to the self-existing one, or to the eternal one. Okay, so a pretty incredible name, Yahweh or Jehovah, Yahweh. You know, people will argue about how you're supposed to pronounce it and all of that. Well, listen, he's the self-existing one. That's the most important point there. Okay, so he starts out by saying, give thanks to the self-existing one. And then in verse 2, oh, give thanks to the God of gods. Now, that title there is the word or the name Elohim, Elohim, Elohim. Okay, and what he's saying there is, oh, give thanks to the Elohim of Elohim. There's another word that that Elohim comes from, if I pronounce it right. Well, you guys don't know, so I'll just say it, and you'll go, oh man, Pastor Chris knows all, you know, how to pronounce them all. Eloha, I think it was, Eloah, or Eloha. Now, the idea here, though, and we use the word Elohim, but the what it really comes down to is that the word El signifies strength. That's why I put strong up here. He's the strong one. It's strength. It's like the strength of an oak or an oak tree. So he starts out by saying you should give thanks to the self-existent one. I mean, that's reason enough. He's self-existing. And then verse 2, give thanks to the strong one, the strong of all the strong. To the God, the uppercase G of all the lowercase g's, the God of gods. And then in verse 3, there's a third title here. Oh, give thanks to the Lord of lords. And this is the name Adonai. Now, what I put here was sovereign. He's sovereign, and that's what that name Adonai means. Now, Adonai wasn't just used for God. It could have been used, and sometimes you'll see it in the scriptures where it was used for a king, an earthly king. But the idea is that he is the Adonai of the Adonais. He's the top one. There isn't anyone above him. So he's the self-existing one. He's the strong one, the strongest of the strong. And he is the sovereign of all of the sovereign. Any earthly kings that might be sovereign, you know, as a king, as royalty, he's above them in that sovereignty. So 3 wonderful titles or, names for God. We start out in verse 1 again with Yahweh or Jehovah or Yahweh, and then Elohim in verse 2, and then in verse 3, Adonai. But each of them signifies a different aspect or characteristic here. He's a self-existing one. He's strong. He's the strongest of the strong, and he is sovereign over all. Sovereign over all. So a wonderful way to start out. Now, you'll notice in each verse, again, I'll point it out. Verse 1, he says, give thanks to him because he is good, for he is good. And then because his mercy endures forever. That's a phrase that we've seen. We saw it in the last psalm that we covered, Psalm 118. His mercy endures forever. It means that his mercy is never ending. His mercy is never ending. What an incredible thought. Because each of us has mercy that we show. If you've got a younger brother or a younger sister, you have at some point in your life shown them mercy. You could have just obliterated them. You might have gotten angry at them, and you could have just taken them out, but you didn't. You had mercy on them. Your parents at some point, well, I shouldn't say at some point, lots of points, no doubt, have had mercy on you. They didn't give you what you did deserve. You deserved discipline or punishment, and they didn't give it to you. Well, as much mercy as we might have, or as much mercy as our parents might have, God's mercy is never ending, for his mercy endures forever. Now again, he's going to tell us that in every single verse, so I will not read that in every single time, but we know that his mercy endures forever. Now, what he does in the next section, so we know who we're to give thanks to. We do know that he's good. We know that we should thank him because his mercy endures forever. But now what he does, beginning at verse 4, is he tells us about the great wonders that God has performed. Verse 4, we see it right there. I'm not, I didn't make anything up here. To him who alone does great wonders. Great wonders, great miracles. We've got a great God who does great wonders. Now you'll notice in verse 4 also that it says to him alone. So as we consider great wonders, it's to God alone, because only God alone can do these kinds of great wonders. Can other people do great wonders? I suppose. It depends on what your definition of great wonders is. If you watch the Olympics or you watch sporting events, there's always somebody that's pushing to break the record. Several years ago, it was Jesse Owens, but in track meets or whatever, there's always going to be somebody that's faster, stronger. And you watch them and you go, oh man, that's a great wonder. Man, that's incredible. I can't believe that somebody was able to run faster than this world record or whatever. That's a great wonder, but it's not nearly as great of a wonder as God. And it says here, he alone does great wonders. So these great wonders are great wonders that God alone can do and did. Now it goes on in verse 5. Again, I told you I wasn't going to read that phrase over and over again, for his mercy endures forever, although it's a great phrase. But he begins to tell us about these great wonders. And in verses 4 to 9, the first great wonder is that he spoke the world into existence. Verse 5 says, to him who by wisdom made the heavens. So it was by wisdom that God made the heavens. And then in verse 6, to him, still the same God, still the same person that the thanks is being given to him who laid out the earth above the waters. That phrase there, laid out, when it says laid out the earth, fascinating phrase, because it indicates a stretching. Now, if you are interested in science at all, maybe some of you, there might be someone in here who keeps up on the latest scientific theories. What scientists have discovered over the years is that the universe is stretching out. They cannot find where it's stretching out from, but they have come to the conclusion that it's stretching out from somewhere. In other words, that there's some point way out there, light years into the universe somewhere. They cannot find it, but as they've studied the universe, they've come to realize that the universe is stretching out from some specific point. Now, if you want to call it the Big Bang, call it whatever you want, but you and I know, because we've got a biblical worldview, that the world began when God spoke it into existence. And the phrase here, laid out the earth, means that he stretched everything out from some point, from some beginning point. It hasn't just always been there. The universe didn't start, by accident. You can say the Big Bang, but where did the elements come that created the Big Bang? Where did that come from? Everything had, I'm sorry, what's that? Who lit the Big Bang? Yeah. So it all started from something, okay? And what a wonderful phrase there. So we're thanking him because he made the heavens, because he laid out the earth. Verse 7, to him who made great lights. Great lights? Yeah, he tells us about those in verses 8 and 9. The sun to rule by day. So we all know about the sun. We live in Southern California. one of the reasons that we live in Southern California is because of the sun. Because right now, this is fall. My daughter sent me a picture from North Dakota yesterday. North Dakota. And it was a picture of her driving. She's on the highway. And in front of her, nothing but snow. We're wearing shorts and t-shirts, man. And we're like, oh, man, it's so cold out there. We don't have a clue. I saw a video a little bit earlier. I was going through Instagram, and I don't remember what state it was in, but they had this dash cam from like a sheriff vehicle or something, and you could see this truck. It was like driving down the road in the snow, and all of a sudden, it's just losing control. It has no traction whatsoever. And here we are. Earlier today, I drive my little Volkswagen. I had the sunroof open, music going, sunshine, a short sleeve t-shirt, man, it's fall, it's so cold out here, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, whatever. One of the reasons that we live here is because of the weather. So we know how important the sun is, we know how great it is. Well, God made the sun. In verse 9, he made the moon and stars to rule by night. So if we go out right now, we could probably see the moon, I think. I don't know, is the moon even showing tonight? I don't know, but anyways, and the stars. Well, God put those there. He put them there. He spread them out with his fingertips. So the first of his great wonders is that he spoke the world into existence. But we move on into verse 10, where we see the second of the great wonders that are named. He did a lot more great wonders than this. We've just got a couple of them mentioned here. Here's the second one. He saved his people from slavery, beginning at verse 10. It says there, to him who struck Egypt in their firstborn. Now, if you're not sure what he's talking about, you want to go back to the book of Exodus and read there the story, the testimony there of what happened. But God came to say, God went to Egypt to save his people from slavery, and he struck or killed the firstborn of the Egyptians so that they would release the Israelites, God's people. Verse 11 says, and he brought out Israel from among them. He brought them out. There it is. He saved them. Verse 12, he did it with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. Okay? That means that he's got a strong hand, and his outstretched arm means he was able to reach. His arm wasn't too short. He was able to reach, he was able to save. Then it says in verse 13, to him who divided the Red Sea in two. And that word there, divided, is the same word that's used in other places in the Bible. One of them is when Abraham cut the animal in two different pieces, but it's always used in the same way. It's like a slicing, a cutting of something. And so the psalmist pictures the Red Sea crossing as God taking a sword, and slicing that river in half, the Red Sea in half, and allowing his people to go through. Verse 14, he made Israel pass through the midst of it. We know the story. They went through the middle of it. Verse 15, but overthrew Pharaoh and his army in the Red Sea. So there is again another one of his great wonders. He saved his people from slavery. Who could do that? They were in slavery there in Egypt for hundreds of years. How were they ever going to get out of it? They couldn't. But God rescued them. That certainly was not the only time that he rescued his people. But he moves on into verse 16 to give us our third, which is that he safely led his people. After he rescued them from Egypt, from slavery, he then leads them through the wilderness. Look at verse 16. To him who led his people through the wilderness. To him who, verse 17, who struck down great kings. Now, he'll tell us about the great kings in just a minute. But he starts out by saying, listen, once he got us out of slavery, then he led us through the wilderness. I don't know if any of you have actually ever been out to the wilderness. You might go camping with your family or whatever, but if you've ever been just out in the middle of nowhere. And you think about that, here we can go, Scott Road's out here, Menifee's over there, Menifee Road's over there, and, you got your landmarks and all of that. But imagine being out in the middle of what we call nowhere, being out in the middle of the wilderness, and you don't have any streets to navigate by. Which way are we going here? What are we going to do? Without God, they would have been lost. But he led his people safely through the wilderness. Now, he'll tell us about how he did that safely, and he begins by telling us about the kings. Verse 17, to him who struck down great kings. Verse 18, and slew or killed famous kings. He tells us who the kings were. Verse 19, Sihon, king of the Amorites. Verse 20, Og, king of Bashan. So in leading his people safely through the wilderness, he didn't just lead them in the right direction, which we'll find out what the right direction is in just a moment. But what he's saying is here is that he gave them protection as he was leading them through the wilderness. You know, in the wilderness, there are wild things in the wilderness. That's why it's called the wilderness, the wilderness. There's wild out there, animals, you know, snakes. There's whatever else out there, things that can do you harm. Several years ago, the first time I met Pastor Cisco, we were in the Philippines together. Our groups, we went to the Philippines together, and we were going to a place called Canyupe. And we stopped, and we had some trouble with some of the people, and he was going to take them back to the boat. Again, this is the first time I ever met Cisco. And then I said, well, hey, I'd like to continue on into the village. How do I get there? I wasn't thinking. He goes, okay, well, yeah, there's these stones on the ground. Just follow the stones. And so I just take off into the Philippine jungle. And then halfway into the jungle, like I finally stop, I look around, and I'm thinking, I've never been out here before in my life. And this man from Revival, this guy named Cisco, just sent me into the jungle by myself. I think he was trying to take me out. I'm not sure. But in the wilderness, you know, when I'm out there, all of a sudden I think, man, do they have like, you know, I'm thinking, does the Philippines? I'm trying to remember, like, you know, does the Philippines have like animals or, you know, snakes and things that, you know, are dangerous to human beings? You know what I mean? It's like a great time to think about that, right? But now I'm out in the middle of the jungle. What am I going to do? So I just continued on, and I'm looking for the steps desperately, like, oh, where are the stones? You know, and I finally found the village or whatever. But, you know, out in the wilderness, there are wild things, there are dangers. Well, here, he talks about some of the kings along that wilderness journey that tried to attack them. And yet God provided protection from those kings for his people. That was part of being safely led by God. Well, then he named some of the kings there, but look what he did in verses 21 and 22. And gave their land, those kings, gave their land as a heritage. Verse 22, a heritage to Israel, his servant. In other words, not only did he give protection, but he provided. So he had protection and provision for the people. That was part of being safely led by God. That's what God does. He safely leads. He'll give protection and provision. He had a specific direction that he was leading them in, and it was to the promised land. Many of you have been around with us on Sunday mornings, and so you're familiar with this. Oh yeah, the promised land, yep. God got them there, right? If you're not sure, you want to go back to Exodus. Read through Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy. And now we're in Joshua. And we're reading about them getting into the promised land. So we're familiar with this. Well, the psalmist is saying, listen, these are all reasons to be thankful because of who God is, because of what he does, because of his great wonders. There's a fourth and final section underneath the great wonders. And really what it is in verses 23 to 26 is it's simply a summary. He goes back and he says, okay, let me summarize for you. Verse 23. Who remembered us in our lowly state. Verse 24. And rescued us from our enemies. Verse 25. Who gives food to all flesh or all people. He feeds everybody. Verse 26. He finishes with, oh, give thanks to the God of heaven, for his mercy endures forever. But there he summarizes for us. This is what God, generally speaking, this is what he does. He remembers us in our lowly state or our sad state. He rescues us from our enemies. He provides food or he nourishes us when we are in need. So these are all wonderful reasons, these great wonders to give thanks to God. But these are wonderful reminders for you and I that God spoke the world into existence. I exist because of God. If it wasn't for God, I would not exist. If God stopped sustaining me, I would cease to exist. God saves his people from slavery. All of us in here, or at least hopefully all of us, were saved. What did we get saved from? Well, you could say we got saved from sin, or we got saved from death, and those would be true. But this is a good reminder that we were saved from slavery. We were enslaved to sin. But God saved us in a miraculous way. He safely leads his people. We're his people. He safely leads us. I've said it lots of times in here. What does the Bible tell us? That he who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. So the journey that you're on, he's the one that got you started on that journey, and he's going to make sure that he safely leads you. He's going to provide protection for you and provisions for you along the way, and he will get you to your destination. What a wonderful reminder. What wonderful reasons to be thankful to God, not just tomorrow, but tomorrow's good also, but tonight and on Friday and on Saturday and every day after that. And then that summary at the end reminding us that God remembers us. He rescues us and he replenishes us. Verse 23 remembers us. Verse 24 rescues us. Verse 25 replenishes us. What wonderful things to be thankful for. Now, let's do this before we go. I think that this is going to be fun. Hopefully you will. Here's what we're going to do. Now, I do not know exactly how this psalm, how it was sung, when it was originally written and used for worship. But we won't sing it, okay? We won't sing it. But here's what we will do. We're going to go through all 26 verses. I'm going to invite you. You don't have to. I'm going to invite you, though. I am going to read the first part. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. You respond with, for his mercy endures forever. And we'll go through each line. And then at the end of it, we'll have a really good idea of what it must have sounded like. But, of course, back then they were singing it as a whole congregation. Okay? So, your part is, for his mercy endures forever, after each of my lines. Everybody understand? Yeah. All right, here we go. Starting at verse 1. And I'll just continue reading right through. I'm not going to say, okay, verse 1, verse 2, verse 3. I'll just read each line, and then you respond. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. Oh, give thanks to the God of gods. For his mercy endures forever. Good job. Oh, give thanks to the Lord of lords. For his mercy endures forever. To him who alone does great wonders. For his mercy endures forever. To him who by wisdom made the heavens. For his mercy endures forever. To him who laid out the earth above the waters. To him who made great lights, for his mercy endures forever. The sun to rule by day, for his mercy endures forever. The moon and stars to rule by night, for his mercy endures forever. To him who struck Egypt in their firstborn, for his mercy endures forever. And brought out Israel among them, for his mercy endures forever. With a strong hand and with an outstretched arm. To him who divided the Red Sea in two, for his mercy endures forever. And made Israel pass through the midst of it, for his mercy endures forever. But overthrew Pharaoh and his army in the Red Sea, for his mercy endures forever. To him who led his people through the wilderness, for his mercy endures forever. To him who struck down great kings, for his mercy endures forever. And slew famous kings, for his mercy endures forever. Sihon, king of the Amorites, and Og, king of Bashan, for his mercy endures forever. And gave their land as a heritage, for his mercy endures forever. A heritage to Israel his servant, for his mercy endures forever. Almost finished here. Who remembered us in our lowly state, for his mercy endures forever. And rescued us from our enemies, for his mercy endures forever. Who gives food to all flesh, for his mercy endures forever. Oh, give thanks to the God of heaven, for his mercy endures forever. Excellent job. Well done. Yeah. What a wonderful reminder. I don't know about you, but I know for me, I need repetition in my life. I need to be reminded of the good things, of the things that I'm supposed to be doing. And what a wonderful psalm to finish up our series and to be reminded 26 times that his mercy endures forever. 26 times his mercy endures forever. What's that?
Try to say that very fast.
Yeah, try to say that 26 times really fast. Let's go ahead and pray. Father, thank you so much for tonight.